Moving over now to Europe, where the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the Russian President Vladimir Putin is not preparing for a ceasefire, but is instead preparing his troops for new offensive operations in Ukraine. This statement comes as the Russian leader gets set to meet the U.S. President Donald Trump for peace talks in Alaska.
Президент Трамп оголосив про підготовку своєї зустрічі з Путіним.
President Zelensky said Russian President Putin is definitely not preparing for a ceasefire or an end to the war. He stated this in a video message posted on his social media account on Monday night, where he argued that there is no indication whatsoever that the Russians have received signals to prepare for a post-war situation. The Ukrainian leader stated that, on the contrary, President Putin is redeploying their troops and forces in ways that suggest preparations for a new offensive operation. President Zelensky said reports from Ukrainian intelligence and military commanders indicate that President Putin intends to present his meeting on Friday with President Donald Trump as a personal victory and then continue acting exactly as before in the war on Ukraine. Ukraine's military spokesperson for the southern frontline sector revealed that Russia was moving some military units in the Zaporizhia region for further assaults. Earlier on Monday, President Zelensky warned that any concessions to Russia would not persuade it to stop fighting in Ukraine. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump says there will be some land swapping going on, which will be for the good of Ukraine. President Trump also said he would know probably in the first 2 minutes of the meeting with President Putin whether progress was possible. Still on the war in Ukraine. 26 European heads of state and government have stressed on the inherent right of Ukraine to choose its own destiny. In a statement endorsed by leaders of all EU member countries except Hungary, the leaders argued that a just and lasting peace that brings stability and security must respect international law and that international borders must not be changed by force. They also added that meaningful negotiations can only take place in the context of a ceasefire or reduction of hostilities.
Global affairs analyst Kunle Falowo joins me on the news to discuss the progression of the Russia-Ukraine war. Good to have you join us at this time. First, let's get a reaction to Hungary exempting itself from that position of the EU countries insisting that international borders must not be changed by force and that Ukraine holds right, authority, and responsibility for what happens.
Absolutely. At this point, the European Union and all the European allies are all frightened with the possibility of a repetition of incidents or a repetition of occurrence in the light of what had happened or what the entire world had witnessed in Ukraine and what Russia had done to the Ukraine territory. Let's not forget that the war didn't just technically start 3 years ago. It has started a long time before now, particularly when Russia single-handedly annexed Crimea from the Ukrainian region, and that came without any consequences or repercussion. It seemed like the entire world was just numb to it. They really didn't care about it that much. But now we're seeing that a lot of European countries are starting to get worried because they're looking at the possibility of, if Russia gets away with this, who's next?
Indeed, and that's raised serious concerns, really. Now, we know that Volodymyr Zelensky himself, at this time is doubting the intention of his Russian counterpart. He believes that Vladimir Putin is not preparing for a ceasefire, but instead preparing his troops for new offensive operations in Ukraine. Where does that leave, the peace talks and efforts by allies, on both sides of the divide to secure peace in the troubled region?
The most important thing right now is making sure that meetings does hold and another important factor to it is to ensure that whatever resolution is meaningful, not only to the Russian part, also to the Ukrainian part. And some international observers has also said that a cessation of hostilities from Russia would just be the start, and there's no negotiations that should be done without having their Ukrainian counterpart in there, representing his own country, because um, Russia had seized a sizable portion of Ukraine, unfortunately, currently right now, and nothing can be said of Ukrainian side holding sway. They haven't really gotten any far. They just trying to survive with the ones that they have to protect the territory. But be that as it may, it is important that whatever negotiations it's being carried out. Uh, Vladimir Zelensky should also be part and parcel of it. And I also want to mention that it's also very important that the European Union virtual call that's supposed to be holding on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, with their American counterpart, should hold, and they should also be able to articulate their demands and make sure that there's no concession for hostilities, especially when we're looking at Russia and Ukraine.
Friday is almost here, and wait to see whether or not Volodymyr Zelensky would be able to participate in that meeting. But then already President Trump is, I don't know if I would call him a seer now, trying to act like or a psychologist. So I really do not know what words to use. But he said that he would know probably in the first 2 minutes of meeting with President Putin if progress is being made on ending the war. What do you say about that?
We all know Mr. Trump for his very smart way of describing very extremely complicated things to just few words, but that doesn't mean that that's actually what's going to happen. Let's just be realistic and be very optimistic in some part. For one part, Vladimir Putin had never stepped in the U.S. territory for over a decade. So him coming over to Alaska to meet with Mr. Trump after not being able to have visited America for over 10 years, it's a landmark achievement. Let's give it to him. But the most important thing is making sure that whatever resolution that comes forth from the meeting is something that would not jeopardize the independence of Ukraine.
Thank you very much for talking to us about that on World Now. Thank you very much, Kunle Falowo.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.